"Shut up, Mom. Nobody cares about your ancient nonsense." The words cut across the dinner table like a blade. My fork froze mid-air. A piece of chicken trembled on it. Across from me, Ethan, my grandson, stared down at his mashed potatoes. Julia's husband snorted into his wine glass, and just like that, I was erased. I'd been telling a story about her father, about the time he forgot her birthday cake and came home with a watermelon. The kind of story that once made her laugh until she cried. But not tonight. Tonight, she cut me down like a senile old woman who'd overstayed her welcome. Her husband chuckled again, not even trying to hide it. The children knew, their faces flushed, eyes locked on their plates. They felt the wrongness in the air, but no one looked at me. No one defended me. So I smiled. I made myself small. I swallowed the burn behind my eyes. I sat through the rest of that dinner like a ghost, nodding, smiling, helping with dishes because I didn't want to cause a scene, because I still wanted to believe it was just a bad moment, not a revelation. But deep down, something cracked. That was the last meal I ever had at my daughter's table. "Shut up, Mom." That's what she said. And what she meant was, "You're done. We've moved on." The next morning, I told myself she was just stressed. Bills. The kids, her useless husband. Maybe I was being dramatic, sensitive. Still in my coat from last night, I stared at a cold mug of untouched coffee. The silence of my house was deafening. Her voice replayed in my head, sharp, impatient, like I was some babbling stranger on the bus. She used to beg me for that story. Now it was ancient nonsense. I pressed my hands to my face. My skin felt paper thin, ready to crumble. "She didn't mean it," I whispered. "She's just tired." But then I remembered her eyes. No regret, no softness, just irritation, like I was a burden, a sound to be tolerated. She barely touched her plate. She didn't say goodbye. Her husband never looked at me once. Was I imagining it? Reading too much into a moment? I reached for my phone. Her name glowed on the screen. Julia, home. The photo was old. Her holding her youngest, smiling, sending me updates, selfies, love. My thumb hovered over the call button. I didn't press it because here's the truth. I'd been explaining her behavior away for years. Busy, pressured, didn't mean it like that. But last night wasn't a slip. It wasn't a one-off. It was the culmination, and for the first time I saw it clearly. I wasn't her mother anymore. Not in the way that mattered. I was someone she endured, expected to stay quiet, to show up with food, to keep the past to myself. Still, the guilt twisted in me because what kind of mother even questions her own child? What kind of mother wonders if the baby she raised doesn't love her anymore? I closed my phone and sat there in silence, too afraid to cry, too ashamed to admit the truth. She didn't snap because she was tired. She didn't snap because she was overwhelmed. She snapped because somewhere along the way she stopped seeing me as a person. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching the light shift through the blinds. My mind wouldn't quiet down. It just kept circling back, dragging up years I hadn't thought about in ages. I remembered the winter she got pneumonia. She was 7. We were living in that little apartment above the pharmacy, the one with the broken heater that wheezed like an old man. She slept curled against me, her forehead burning, her breath rasping in the dark. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I just held her and whispered, "I've got you. You're safe." I remembered sewing her Easter dress by hand because I couldn't afford the one she wanted. I stayed up past 2 a.m., threading pearls around the neckline because she said it looked princessy. She twirled through the church aisle that Sunday, her head high, beaming, and I thought, this is worth it. Every blister, every extra shift, all of it. I remembered when that boy Aaron broke her heart in high school. She sobbed into my lap and whispered, "You're the only person who loves me for real, Mom. That same girl just told me to shut up at her table. She didn't flinch. She didn't care that the children were watching. And that's what gutted me. Not the insult, not even the silence that followed, but how easy it was for her. Like the years I broke my back to keep her warm and fed didn't matter. Like the sacrifices were just background scenery. I worked 2 jobs so she could go to college. I went without vacations, without new clothes, sometimes even without heat in the winter, so she wouldn't feel less than the other kids. I told myself it was love. That's what mothers do. We give and give and give. But sitting alone in that cold kitchen, the coffee untouched, the silence stretching like a punishment, I asked myself something I had never dared to before. What if she never saw any of it? What if all those years, all that giving just taught her to take? And what if I made her that way? The house was quiet that morning, too quiet. The kind of quiet that lets every memory echo louder than it should. I walked from room to room just trying to breathe. But everywhere I looked, I saw her. Not grown-up Julia, not the woman who silenced me. The little girl I had built this world around. On the bookshelf, her dance trophies, tiny gold figurines, chipped from falls, but still standing. On the second shelf, her valedictorian certificate, the one I helped her write when her hands shook too much to finish. She never thanked me. I never expected her to. But now I wonder if she even remembers. In the closet, her wedding dress sealed in a garment bag, airtight, untouched. Along the hem, tiny embroidered roses. 3 months I spent learning, pricking my fingers raw, bleeding into the fabric. She said it made the dress feel one of a kind. I said, "You are." After the wedding, I had it cleaned and preserved. She never came to pick it up. And then there was the quilt folded neatly at the edge of the guest bed, a patchwork of her baby clothes. I made it when her first child was born. She never used it, said it was too sentimental. I sat on the bed smoothing the fabric with shaking hands. What was all this if not proof of love, of devotion, of a life lived in service to her? I didn't have much, not money, not fame, not even many friends anymore. But I had this house, and I filled it with proof of who I was, proof of what I gave, proof of how much I loved her, and she left it all behind. I thought these things would anchor her back to me someday. Instead, they've become a museum. A museum of a mother who no longer fits into her daughter's life, a shrine no one visits, a story no one wants to hear, just ancient nonsense. Looking back, I realized the insult wasn't sudden. It was just the first time she said it out loud. The truth is, the signs were there. Sunday dinners had been changing slowly, like rot beneath floorboards. At first, it was small things. The way she rolled her eyes when I asked her to pass the salt. The way her husband snickered when I repeated a story. How they cut me off mid-sentence to talk about some Netflix show I'd never heard of. And every time I stumbled over a name or forgot a headline from the news, they'd exchange that look. That look like I was fading. At first, I laughed it off. "I'm just getting old," I'd say, chuckling, trying to play along, trying to stay included. But the laughter never reached their eyes. And eventually, I stopped talking so much. I told myself I was being considerate, giving the younger ones space. But what I was really doing was shrinking quietly, without meaning to. I was making myself small. One Sunday, I brought my lemon bars, the ones Julia used to beg for every summer. She barely glanced at them, said they were too sweet now, and pushed the plate away. Another time, I told the story of when she fell asleep in her father's toolbox, curled up like a kitten. Her husband interrupted with a fake snore. "Here we go again," he said. Everyone laughed. "Even her! Even her!" No one told them to stop, not even Julia. And every week it chipped away at me. But last Sunday that wasn't a chip. That was a hammer, a clean break. After dinner, I helped with the dishes. Her husband dried the plates beside me and said, smirking, "You really shouldn't take things so personal. It's just how people joke." I didn't reply. I just kept scrubbing the pan because if I opened my mouth, I would have screamed. But inside, something solidified. This wasn't miscommunication. It wasn't just a joke, it was disrespect. Disrespect that grew in comfort, fed by my silence. And now full grown, living in my daughter's home like it belonged there. And maybe it did, because I had let it. I didn't drive home right away. After the dishes were done, after the goodbyes, mumbled without eye contact, I stepped out the front door and kept walking past my car, down the block, around the corner. The night was cold, but I didn't feel it. Not until an hour later, sitting in my car with the engine off, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. Her house was still in my rearview mirror, warm lights glowing in the windows, shadows moving inside. Her life, her family, the world I was once the center of. Now I was parked outside like a stranger. I sat in that silence, staring at the porch light that used to mean home, and a sentence broke out of me. Soft, but certain. She doesn't see me as her mother anymore, only as furniture. That's what I'd become, a fixture, a background extra in her curated family life. Useful, quiet, invisible, unless I disrupted the mood. I buried my face in my hands and let the sob come, the kind that starts silent, shoulders shaking, breath stolen. Then the sound followed, ugly, raw. It had been years since I cried like that. Not since my husband died. Not since I folded his last sweater and tucked it into the donation box, my hands trembling. But this was worse, because death doesn't choose. But rejection, that's personal. That's deliberate. I cried until my throat burned, until the windows fogged with my breath. And when I looked up again, the house was still there, still glowing, still full of people who hadn't noticed I hadn't come back in. Not even Julia. I could have driven off a cliff and she wouldn't have called. She probably didn't even realize. I was still parked outside. I wiped my face on my sleeve, and in that moment, I understood what had been building for years. I was waiting for her to love me again. Waiting for her to notice me, to thank me, to see me. But she didn't need my love anymore. She just needed me useful. She just needed me silent. And I wasn't sure which of those things hurt more. Back home, I walked straight to the den and pulled down the old photo album. The one with the green corduroy cover, the one with peeling corners. I hadn't opened it since the funeral. I sat on the floor right in front of the bookshelf and turned the pages. And there she was, Julia at 5, pigtails, overalls, clutching. Her teddy bear like it held the whole world together. I could still hear her tiny voice. "Mama, don't let the monsters get me." And I'd whisper back, "They'll have to go through me first." That little girl was everything to me. And somewhere along the way, she turned into a woman who barely tolerated my voice. But still, wasn't I the adult here? Wasn't I the mother? Wasn't it my job to forgive? I pressed my hand against the plastic sheet, the photo beneath it, Julia, asleep on my chest in a hospital chair. Post-appendectomy, maybe 7 years old. My heart twisted like a rag wrung dry. And then came the guilt voice. The voice passed down by generations of women before me. Maybe you were too hard on her. Maybe she's going through something. Maybe she doesn't know how much she's hurting you. I had answers to all of it, but none of them made the ache go away. I looked around the room, the blanket draped over the armchair. I knitted it the year her father died just to keep my hands from shaking. The cuckoo clock above the fireplace. She made that in Girl Scouts. It hadn't worked in years, but I never took it down. Every object here was a shrine to my role as her mother. So, who was I without that? Who was I if I stopped trying to win her affection? If I pulled back, if I let the silence stretch long enough for her to feel it, would she even notice? Would she miss me, or would she just be relieved? I closed the album and pressed it to my chest. I felt old, not in years, but in disappointment. In where, In erosion, I whispered to the quiet room. If I wasn't her mother, I don't know who I'd be. And the terrible truth was, maybe she'd already decided for me. The next morning, something shifted. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was quieter than that, like finding a stone in your shoe you'd been limping on for years and finally stopping to pull it out. I was rinsing a teacup when I glanced at the folder on the counter, the one from the credit union. That's when it came back to me. The house Julia lived in. Mine. She liked to say she bought it from me, but she never signed a mortgage. I let her move in after her second miscarriage when her marriage was wobbling and her smile had disappeared. Stay as long as you need, I told her. Heal. She never left. I never asked for rent. The car she drives, that pearl-white SUV, is still in my name. I paid the registration. I covered the insurance. Every oil change built to my card. And the savings account. Every overdraft emergency in the last 10 years, I covered it. I even paid off a hospital bill she never told her husband about. She cried when I did it and said, "You're my safety net, Mom." But I wasn't her safety net anymore. Now I was just nuisance noise. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the drawer. Bank statements, title transfers, copies of her car note, the property deed, tax records, all of it in my name. She thought, I belonged to her like some aging appliance in the corner. But the truth is, she belonged to me, not in a cruel, possessive way, but in a real legal way. The walls she slept under, the car she drove to work, the money that kept her family afloat, every piece was tethered to me. And until now, I had never thought of it as power. Because I didn't raise her to owe me. I raised her to feel safe. But she confused love with entitlement, and I confused giving with being needed. I looked down at the deed in my hands and felt a flicker. Not vengeance, not yet, just clarity. The tools had always been here. I'd just never thought to pick them up. She thought I'd never leave, that I'd always be quiet, always loyal, always willing. But for the first time in my life, I realized she depends on me more than I ever depended on her. And maybe it was time she learned what silence really sounds like. The next day, I made an appointment. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just dressed in slacks, combed my hair, and printed every document I could find. I wasn't even sure what I was asking for. Not revenge, not yet. I just needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that this ache in my chest wasn't just getting old or taking things too personally. The law office was quiet and warm. Behind the desks sat a woman about Julia's age, sharp blazer, no-nonsense glasses, not a drop of pity in her eyes. Her name was Miss Harper, real estate and family law. "Take your time," she said, sliding me a box of tissues. I laid it all out slowly and carefully. The property deed, the vehicle title, the joint account, the pattern, the voice in Julia's dining room that told me out loud that I was irrelevant. "I'm not here to sue her," I said, hands trembling. "I just think I need to stop enabling her. But I feel like a monster for even thinking that." Ms. Harper didn't flinch. She leaned forward. "You're not a monster. You're a mother who's been emotionally exploited and financially drained by her own daughter." The word exploited sat on the desk between us like a bomb. "She's my child," I whispered. "She was. You're still her mother," Ms. Harper said. "That won't change, but your relationship already has. She sees you as a resource, not a person." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" "You stop apologizing," she said, "and you protect what's yours." She laid out the options, quiet legal steps, nothing dramatic. Revoke the car access. Freeze the joint account. Initiate the property transition. No need to scream. Let the silence do the talking. "She's going to hate me." Ms. Harper raised an eyebrow. "She already disrespects you. There's nothing left to lose except yourself." I sat there stunned, grieving maybe, but also a little lighter because someone had finally said it out loud. I wasn't crazy. I was being used. And now I had a plan. The ride home felt different, like I wasn't driving back to the same life, but walking out of a cage I hadn't realized I was in. I wasn't angry, not yet, just clear. I stood in my hallway, holding the folder Miss Harper had given me. Legal steps outlined plain as day. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, but deliberate. I walked into the kitchen and sat at the table, the same table where I once helped Julia with math homework, where I iced birthday cakes, where I taught her to write thank you notes after Christmas, and I said it out loud, just once, just for me. No more scraps. That's what I'd been living on, scraps of kindness, scraps of attention, leftovers from a daughter who saw me as an accessory. Useful when convenient, silent when not. I had raised her. I had saved her more than once, but I would not spend the last years of my life begging her to see me. Let her feel what absence tastes like. I opened the folder and read the steps again. Revoke her access to the bank account. Reclaim legal title of the vehicle. Initiate intent to sell the property. Everything quiet, everything legal, everything mine. And I wouldn't call her. I wouldn't warn her. I wouldn't argue. She'd feel it when the ground shifted beneath her feet. That night, I made myself a simple dinner, roasted vegetables and rice. No one criticized the seasoning. No one sighed when I reached for seconds. No one rolled their eyes when I spoke. I ate in peace, alone, but not lonely. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sitting in a room full of people who barely saw me. I was sitting with myself. And she, the woman I used to be before motherhood swallowed her whole, was finally coming up for air. This wasn't punishment. It wasn't revenge. It was correction, a rebalancing of power, of respect, of worth. No more proving, no more begging, no more shrinking to fit the spaces she allowed me. Let her figure out how to live without my name propping up her life. Let her hear the silence and finally wonder what she did to earn it. I started with the drawer next to the fridge, the one I hadn't touched in months, maybe years, old receipts, birthday cards, warranty slips, and buried under it all, a rubber-banded stack of bank statements. I carried them to the table, took a breath, and began. Every check I'd written, every time I'd helped out. $12,000 for the down payment on her dream home. $4,800 for preschool tuition when her husband got laid off. $950 when she called sobbing after a fender bender. She never paid back a cent. Not that I asked, because mothers don't keep score until they have to. I opened my laptop, pulled up the emails. Subject line after subject line. Need a quick favor, Mom. Always urgent, always temporary, but temporary became habitual. Habitual became expected. Expected turned into entitlement. I found an old calendar from 3 years ago, color-coded. According to the tally, I babysat for 119 full days that year. I was 65, recovering from a torn rotator cuff. But when I asked for a ride to my doctor's appointment that winter, her husband said they had plans. I remember limping to the bus stop, in the snow alone. Still, I showed up every Sunday with a pie. Still, I smiled when they teased me about forgetting things. Still, I laughed politely when Julia rolled her eyes and called me old school. But now, I wasn't laughing. I was recording. I created folders on my desktop. Julia, financial assistance. Julia, caretaking log. Legal documents. Every piece of proof went in not to hurt her, but to protect myself, to prove I hadn't imagined it, that I wasn't bitter. I was exhausted. By sundown, I had a binder thick with paper and a flash drive full of files. I looked around my kitchen. Nothing had changed, but everything had, because now I had more than grief. I had facts. I had dates. I had numbers. And when it came time to act, there would be no doubt who built the life she stood on. No emotion, no yelling, just the receipts. Let her argue with those. I didn't slam a door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't even tell the neighbor to water the plants. Some exits don't need noise, just a lock turned softly and a key slipped into an envelope. I packed one suitcase, not the big one, not the kind that says I'm never coming back. Just enough to disappear for a while. A week's worth of clothes, my arthritis pills, a book I'd never finished, and one framed photo of my husband from our 30th anniversary. He's holding my hand in it like it still meant something, because it did. That photo was my compass. Still is. The cabin was 2 hours away. A small town off the highway, woods, water, and quiet. I paid in cash, left no forwarding address, not because I was running, but because I wanted to know what it felt like not to be found. Inside, it smelled like pine and old stories. One bed, a fireplace, a chipped kettle on the stove. I unpacked slowly, hung up my sweater, placed the photo by the window, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cooked just for me. No substitutions, no complaints about the salt, no one staring at their phone while I set the table. Just me and peace. I made roasted potatoes and onions, poured a glass of wine, and ate in silence. Halfway through, the chewy tears came. Not choking tears, but quiet tears, the kind that say, "You're finally letting go." Not of Julia, not even of the hurt, but of the need to be accepted by someone who already closed the door in your face. I cried as I chewed. I cried as I washed the plate. And when I climbed into bed that night, the sheets were cold but honest. I stared at the ceiling and whispered to the man in the photo. She doesn't love me like I thought she did, and I can't keep pretending I don't notice. Then I rolled over, pulled the quilt tight, and let myself fall asleep. Not as a mother, not as a burden, but just as me for the first time in years. The first call came the next morning. I was drinking coffee by the window, watching fog lift off the lake like steam from an old wound. My phone lit up. Julia, home. I let it ring. No voicemail, just silence. 3 hours later, another call. This time, a text. Mom, where are you? We were supposed to talk about Ethan's school thing. No greeting, no apology, just the same script. Assuming I was still on call, I turned the phone face down. That afternoon, another message. The bank says, "My name isn't showing up on the joint account. Did you change something?" Now we were getting somewhere. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because she had never once paused to think how her words might have hurt me. The next morning, she left a voicemail. I wasn't planning to listen, but curiosity won. Her voice was tight, forced casual. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Hope everything's okay. Call me when you get this." She didn't ask if I was safe. She didn't say she missed me. She just wanted to know where her access went. That evening, her husband called. I let it go to voicemail. "Hey there, just Julia's freaking out a bit. Says she can't log into the account and we're kind of in the middle of something. Can you, call her? Not, are you all right? Just, can you fix this?" By the third day, the messages turned sharp. "Mom, this isn't funny. Why are you doing this? I need you to call me back now." I didn't, because for years, every request I answered, every emergency I solved, every kindness I gave without question, she treated like a right, not a gift. But the calls kept coming, panic inching in with every hour. And still, I said nothing. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I wanted her to feel the quiet, the same quiet she forced on me every Sunday when I sat at her table unseen. Let her sit with it now. Let her feel what absence sounds like. The voicemail came on day 5. Her voice wasn't tight anymore. It was venom. "You think this makes you powerful? You think this little disappearing act is going to prove something? You were never a good mother. That's why Dad left. That's why no one wants to be around you. You cling to us because you have nothing else. And now you're just proving how pathetic you really are." I sat still, the phone pressed to my chest like a weapon. I didn't cry. Not this time. I just listened to every word she said, every choice she made, every ounce of cruelty she thought she had the right to pour into my ears. She wanted me small again. She wanted me shamed into crawling back to pick up the phone, apologize, reset the game. But then she said it. Dad left because of you. That lie. That knife. I stood up so fast the chair scraped across the wood floor. My legs shook. I gripped the table to steady myself. She rewrote our history to excuse her cruelty. My husband didn't leave me. He died in my arms, calling me his whole world. I wore black for a year. I slept with his pillow beside me for 3. She knew that. She knew. And she said it anyway. I sank to the floor, my back against the cabinets, the phone still in my hand, not crying, fracturing. Not because of what, she said, but because I had held on to hope that deep down, maybe she still loved me. But this wasn't lashing out. This was destruction. Her final attempt to break me back into place. And something inside me hardened, like a tree that finally stops bending and lets the storm snap off the rotten limbs. If she could lie about her father, erase the truth just to feel superior, then there was nothing left to protect. I stood, poured a glass of water, and played the voicemail again. Then I saved it, labeled it evidence, verbal abuse. Miss Harper would want a copy because this wasn't disrespect anymore. This was abuse, and now I had proof. She thought her words would pull me back, but all they did was push me further away into something stronger, sharper, unforgiving. That night, I almost called her. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Her name still saved as Julia. Home. What an insult that word had become. My finger hovered over the button. Because even after everything, the dismissal, the silence, the venom, part of me still hoped she'd answer like my little girl. Not the woman who rewrote my life into a weapon. And then the other voice came. The soft, dangerous one. What if she's... right? What if no one loves you? What if you were just something to survive? The walls of the cabin seemed to close in. The air itself felt hostile. I curled into the corner of the bed, quilt pulled tight to my chin like armor, and I broke. Not with a scream, not with fists pounding pillows, but with a soundless collapse, like the air had been punched out of me, and I'd forgotten how to ask for it back. I wept like a woman who finally understood the depth of what she'd lost. Not just her daughter, but the illusion of her. I thought of every Christmas I forced myself through after my husband died. Every birthday dinner I cooked when I could barely stand. Every time I said, "I'm fine," with a smile that cracked at the edges. And now I was here alone in a rented cabin, sobbing into a quilt no one would ever ask about. I almost picked up the phone. Almost because some part of me still wanted it to be untrue. Still wanted to believe that if I just said the right words, she'd answer with, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean it." But then I heard her voice again. "Nobody wants to hear your ancient nonsense. You were never a good mother." And that's when the crying stopped. Not because I felt better, but because I had finally run out of reasons to defend her. That's what broke me, not the heart that had cracked long ago. It was the belief that I owed her more chances. I sat up, wiped my face, and whispered to the dark, "She's already made her choice." And for the first time, so had I. The next morning, I called Ms. Harper. "I'm ready," I said. She didn't ask for what. She already knew. We moved fast. First, the house, the one Julia lived in like it was her birthright, still mine, never transferred. Ms. Harper initiated the sale quietly, legally through a private network. No sign in the yard, no warning. Julia would be the last to know, just like I always had been. Next, the car, the SUV she drove like it was hers, still in my name. A repossession notice filed, pickup scheduled, then the account closed, smooth. She'd find out at the grocery store or the gas pump or when another emergency overdraft didn't go through. That's when she'd learn how much of her life had been running on my silence. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it to breathe, to reclaim the air she'd been choking for years. Every decision logged, every action by the book. "We're not here to burn her life down," Miss Harper said. "We're here to reclaim yours." By week's end, Julia was severed from every tie she assumed would last forever. Not as revenge, not as punishment, but as consequence. That night, I sat on the cabin porch wrapped in a blanket, listening to the wind move through the trees. No satisfaction, not yet. Just stillness, because power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it looks like silence where there used to be begging, like standing without permission, like remembering the woman I'd buried under, decades of mothering someone who only learned to take. She would scream, she would accuse, she would play victim. But this time, she'd do it from the outside because the foundation she stood on was mine. And I had already stepped off. The call came 3 days later. No voicemail this time, just an endless ring. I finally picked up, not to comfort her, but to confirm what I already knew. "Mom?" Julia snapped. "What the hell is going on?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to hear it, the panic beneath her fury. They said the house is listed, the account's closed, and someone came to tow the car this morning. Her voice cracked, climbing higher. I waited until she was done. Then I said, it calm, even like truth spoken in court. I already did it. Silence. Just the hum of her world unraveling. "What? What do you mean?" she whispered. "I removed myself," I said, "from your table, from your bills, from your chaos, from your contempt. You can't just—" "I can." A pause. "And I did." Her breathing was hard, fast. I pictured her pacing in the kitchen where she once told me to shut up. "You're destroying me," she said, quieter now. "You're ruining everything." I almost laughed. "No, I just stopped funding the fantasy that you were entitled to my life." Her tone shifted, syrupy, practiced. "Mom, I didn't mean those things. I was upset. You know how stress gets to me." I let the silence stretch, made her sit in it. That same silence she used to force on me at Sunday dinners. "I needed you," she whispered. "No," I corrected. "You needed control." I gave her the truth, soft, but final. "I won't fight you. I won't yell. But I won't fund your cruelty anymore." She tried again, voice breaking. Maybe real, maybe not. But I didn't argue. I didn't hang up. I just let her feel it. The moment when a woman realizes her mother is no longer her property, just a voice on the other end of the line, sounding nothing like the mother she used to dominate, sounding free. It was Christmas Eve when it all unraveled publicly. Julia hosted the annual holiday party at the house, the one she still claimed as her own. Dozens of guests packed the living room, glasses clinking, children darting through the halls. She wore red silk and fake joy, laughing too loud, pouring drinks too generously. Then came the knock. 2 uniformed men, one holding a clipboard, the other a notice. The room froze. The music still played softly, a holiday jazz tune that suddenly sounded absurd. "I'm sorry to interrupt," one of them said. "Are you Julia?" She nodded, still smiling, still pretending. "You've been served," gasps. A wine glass shattered on the floor. Phones were out instantly. The camera caught her face. Confusion, humiliation, fury. Her hand trembled as she read the foreclosure notice in front of neighbors, friends, her husband's colleagues. Another envelope followed, accounts frozen, assets inventoried. I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. By morning, a neighbor had sent me the video. It was already on Facebook. She looked like she'd been slapped. The woman texted, "I'm sorry, but honestly, it was overdue." For Julia, a woman who lived for image, for admiration, shame was worse than punishment, and shame doesn't get filtered. The video caught her husband pulling her into the kitchen. papers in hand. Later, I learned what he said. "You told me she gave you this house. You didn't tell me she could take it back." That night, he packed a bag. Not because I left, but because she lied. And that's when I realized I didn't have to destroy her. She did that all by herself. All I did was stop shielding her from the mirror. I didn't light the fire. I just stepped away from the smoke and let the wind do the rest. By New Year's, Julia's perfect little life was in pieces. Her husband moved out, not in rage, but in disgust. He left a note, slipped under her coffee mug. A neighbor saw it before he drove away. "You mocked the woman who made your life possible. That says everything." Friends stopped answering, even the ones she thought were loyal. Turns out people know how to smile while they silently tally your cruelty. The PTA mom she bragged about hosting blocked her. Her boss suggested she take an unpaid leave. Too much drama, too much attention. By then, the video had gone everywhere. People shared it like a soap opera. The daughter who thought she owned everything. The mother who walked away. She texted me twice that week. The first was short. "Why are you doing this to me?" I didn't reply. The second was longer, a paragraph, almost convincing. "I didn't realize how much I relied on you. I get it now. Please, can we talk? I'm not the villain you think I am." Funny how they call it reliance when the tap runs dry. I sat with the message for a long time. Even drafted a reply, then deleted it because what was left to say? She wasn't sorry for the cruelty. She was sorry the privileges ended. Her world was built on a lie that I would never leave, that I would always absorb the blows, that my love meant access. But love without respect isn't love. It's labor. And I had clocked out. Word reached me later. She's living with her sister. Now. Smaller house, children quiet, confused. She tells people, "I lost it. Let her rewrite. Let her cling to scraps of dignity she never thought she'd have to defend." Because now the only ones listening are the few who still believe her version. And that circle is shrinking fast. She built her house on my foundation, mocked me from the balcony, and now she's watching the roof cave in with no mother left to hold the beams. I sold the house and split the money. Half went into a trust for my granddaughter, along with a letter. She'll open one day when she's old enough to understand who really paid for her future. The other half I gave to a shelter for abandoned mothers, women discarded like I was. No plaque, no attention, just warmth where it was needed. I never went back. I bought a small house near the woods, tomatoes in the garden, tea in the morning, silence that doesn't wound. One night I poured 2 cups, set one beside my husband's photo, and whispered, "She broke me once, but I rebuilt myself stronger." Julia doesn't call anymore, and I don't wait for it because some stories don't end in forgiveness, some end in freedom.